Hello, good afternoon. People start coming into the Zoom space here. Thank you for joining us, and apologies for getting started just a little late. Always the technology gets you at the last minute, so we're just getting ourselves situated here in this space to begin what is going to be a wonderful conversation about Cape Verdean independence and the making of a nation, thinking about the events of the revolution and then its continued reverberations and impacts here on this side of the Atlantic. I'm joined by some fantastic fellow panelists, and in just a moment I'll ask them to introduce themselves. But I do see a couple more people coming into the audience in the Zoom space, so if you'll bear with us and be patient for just a moment more, we'll get ourselves situated as Carlos also works with our third panelist to join us here in the space. Well, I can start. I think it looks like we've got our group of 20 wonderful attendees here. So thank you all for joining us on what perhaps is your lunch break, or if you're joining us from somewhere else further away at maybe another time of day for you. Thank you for coming to join us. My name is Naomi Slipp. I am the Chief Curator and Director of Museum Learning here at the New Bedford Whaling Museum, and very excited to have you join us for this program. Again, thank you for your patience this afternoon as we get started a little bit late in this program. I'd love to just talk for a moment as, again, we wait for our third panelist, hopefully, who will be able to join us here about the reason for this program before I invite our panelists to introduce themselves and we get started. The museum has been working for a couple of years with the community, with our incredible Cape Verdean Advisory Committee, members of which and now current co-chairs we have before us joining us in this panel, on a way to mark the 50th year of independence of Cabo Verde. And very early on, the discussions really centered around an exhibition and a series of programs. Ultimately, where we are today is two incredible exhibitions that have really come together thanks to the generosity of the community, the advice of the advisory committee at the museum, and many, many institutions and organizations across the South Coast and even well beyond. So this exhibition, the exhibition that I wanted to mention is Morabeza, which is an exhibition focused on the Cape Verdean community in the South Coast, with over 40 individual lenders and organizations who have contributed items from their family history, from their personal archive, and from sort of important moments in the life of the community here on the South Coast. I do hope for those attending us this program virtually, if you have not seen the exhibition yet, that you're able to come to the museum. That exhibition is up through February 24th and really is hopefully a celebration of the community and something that really brings it to life. So I did just want to share a plug for the exhibit before we jump into the program. Carlos, have you been able to connecting with Manuel now? All right. If I can ask Angela, would you mind introducing yourself first and sharing a little bit about where you are and what you bring to the discussion today for our audience?
Okay, so good morning. I hope everybody can hear me well. So my name is Angelo Barbosa. I am the director of the Cape Verdean Institute for Cape Verdean Studies here at Bridgewater State University. So I'm not so far from the Whaling Museum. It's a very nice ride to go there. So thank you for the invitation, and I also want to take just a second to thank the Whaling Museum for the wonderful exhibition that was put together, to mark the 50 years independence. So I've been there for the day that it was the opening. It was a fantastic experience to really feel how the work was done and the engagement of so many people to bring that together. So and I'm glad it's gonna stay there for some time for people to be able to see it. So I'm here to participate in this conversation with the two important members of our community, two scholars, Professors Carlos Almeida and Manuel Gonçalves. So two people that I don't need probably any introductions from me, but I respect them a lot for the work that they have done in our community and Cape Verde for so long. So that's my brief introduction.
Great. Thank you. And Carlos, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, everyone. Just before I introduce myself, I was on the phone with Manuel Gonçalves. He said he can listen to people talking. He heard
Okay.
Angelo, but he cannot see
Okay.
himself. So
Wow, okay, hang
yeah,
on. Let's
yeah.
see. Thank you for
Hopefully
that.
he will be able to join and introduce himself
Okay.
again. Yes, my name is Carlos Almeida. I am a professor of Portuguese and Cape Verdean language at Bristol Community College. Also the director of the Luso Centro and coordinator of the uh, Portuguese interpreting certificate here at Bristol Community College as well. I am part of board of directors for the Cape Verdean Association in New Bedford, and I'm also a co-chair of the Cape Verdean Advisory Committee at the New Bedford Whaling Museum. And it has been a pleasure to be working with the museum for many years. And to mention that, it's a great work that the museum is doing in promoting and highlighting part of our Cape Verdean history, the immigration to this country through whaling since the whaling industry, and the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Cape Verdean independence is highlighted as well in the two exhibitions that we have in the museum. And that's a brief introduction of myself as well.
Thank you, Carlos. And for those of you attending in the audience, initially we had planned to have Inez Brito as our third panelist. Inez was in the islands, so you may have seen that in the advertising that circulated. As Carlos said, we're very excited and hopeful that we can still get his participation in this panel to have Manuel Gonçalves join us to talk. Carlos, just if people won't mind, one more little administrative business. Do you know, you said Manuel can hear us in the program?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if would you mind asking him or find out what his name is? If he's attending as an attendee, I think we can move him into the panelist role. Sorry, that's one little piece of business there as we get him into the program.
ID
7576.
Can I give you the ID that it shows, Naomi? Can you repeat, Manuel?
863
ID
0795 7576.
576. Let me work on and figure this out. Manuel, would you mind introducing yourself there on the phone?
Yes.
You can talk, Manuel, on the phone.
Okay. So, my name is Manuel Douglas Gonçalves. I'm from Fogo, or Jar Fogo, Cabo Verde. I studied theology in Portugal, served in Portuguese Navy, and then came to the United States and studied bilingual education with a bachelor's degree, and then on to guidance and counseling, master's degree in guidance at Boston University, another master's degree in ESL and bilingual methodologies. I was a teacher and a guidance counselor with Boston Public Schools for 34 years. and I taught Creole at different universities and colleges in Massachusetts and Rhode Island during all these years, including Harvard Summer Programs, BU, UMass Boston, Rhode Island College, Bridgewater State, now University, and Old Boston State College, and also community organizations. Also serve as an interpreter for the government officials visiting the United States, organize of festivals and other activities such as Smithsonian Festival in 1995 in Washington, D.C., Social Festival in Boston, Massachusetts, and then I'm a member or former member and founder of the Cape Verde Creole Institute, member and founder of Common Threads, and founder of Mili Milan, which produced and published my books, like, the Cape Verdean dictionaries, the Creole to English and Creole and English to Creole, Pen Papier Creole, to the flashcards, and then we do have a Speak Creole app also from Mili Milan. Right now, I'm Vice President of General Assembly of Alma CV, a new organization that deals with language issues in Cabo Verde and the diaspora. That's mainly, in summary, what I've been doing and continue to do. Hello?
Yes, Naomi, people could hear Manuel?
Yes, I could hear.
Yes, yeah.
Great.
And we've got someone saying that they can also see you.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, no, that's good, Manuel.
Mm-hmm. That's great. All right.
I'm
Well,
gonna keep my phone on, I guess, through Manuel. If you cannot join straight.
I'm sorry, I try so hard, but
No, this, I think we've got a good option here is working. And it sounds like the attendees are able to hear and maybe see you as well, which for those joining on our end, we can't. This is the trickery of Zoom. You'd think we're sort of 5 years into this being a normal part of our lives, and it continues to create challenges everywhere you go.
technology.
It is. But as long as this is working, I think, Carlos, thank you for hosting in this way, and we'll keep the conversation going. So I've got some questions for panelists here, just some of the kind of building in the brushstrokes for us all, and then we'll have some opportunity for questions from the audience. I'm going to ask Angelo to kick us off. Angelo, can you frame for our audience the situation in Cabo Verde in the islands in the 1940s and 50s? Sort of what was it like there? What was the context as the sort of beginning of the formal independence movement, the revolutionary movement begins?
Well, Naomi, I will ask you for, I will try my best, and also I would ask my colleagues to, fill in and help with this, because it's a very broad question. So I'll try to go for the elements that I think could be interesting for people to probably take and continue to do their own research, because we don't have the time to go through. So I think it's important to say that the general context is that we had Cape Verde was a colony of Portugal since the mid 15th centuries, right? So given the European expansions, we have to go through that to explain why, what was the purpose of European countries to take on the sea and conquer other lands, as they put it. But what is important to say is that the condition of Cape Verde was seen as a colony of Portugal, and specifically on the 40s and 50s. So the colonial situation was still persisting. So we need to be mindful that we were talking about exactly when the Second World War was starting and ending. So we had at the global context, the UN was already pretty much there. And we could see a lot of political changes in Africa already going. But the impact of this in Cape Verde, we can talk a little bit later, but in terms of giving people a little bit of the context specific on Cape Verde, I think it's important to mention about the economy. So as a small country, Cape Verde is always see itself as a poor country because of the lack of resources. And it's a very fragile economy, given that we had so many cycles of shortage of rain. So the droughts that, every Cape Verdean has this conversation back in terms of what this was the impact of the drought and lack of rain in the country, and the impacts that this had on the social structure and even the psychology of Cape Verdeans. So the 40s is marked by incredible famine cycles in Cape Verde, and because of the lack of rain and related consequences. So poor infrastructure, a kind of abandon of the Portuguese government because Portugal itself was going through difficult times. We need to remember that it was a dictatorship in Portugal in that time. So that started like a decade before. And of course, all this situation had an impact on what we know of the Cape Verdeans, given what happened after that. So it happened even before, but the migration process, all these conditions in the islands, I think, led to the migration with kind of a defined identity of Cape Verdeans, given the conditions that we have in the country. In terms of education, very limited access because, the majority of the population didn't have access to the schooling system. I think the statistics mentioned that by the independence, more than or close to 80% of Cape Verdeans couldn't read or write. So it's an indicator that's important to say. But despite of this, in terms of the cultural identity, I think Cape Verdeans stuck to their music, language, and some soft aspects of the culture that builds the community. So that was important too. But also, I think it's good to say that the conscious about the resilience of the people by that time already started to get some form. I know even back then we had Cape Verdeans that always spoke about the social condition of the islands, but it became like a more political view with the generation of Amilcar Cabral that I'm sure we're gonna talk about him sometime. So I think in general, I think we need to say that, after the 40s, with the droughts and everything, the migration, the situation in the islands started to be, I would say, ready for a change, given that I would say the society and the community and the intellectual people was already in a direction that probably they would make it an opportunity for some changes, given that in the entire world, you are seeing some changes already starting, as I said, after the Second World War and with the movements in Africa itself. But this is like a general aspect of some of elements that I would like to bring, but I'm sure Carlos and Manuel, they could help in terms of explaining this even much better.
Great. Thank you, Angela, for sharing. And especially, I think painting that picture about this kind of critical juncture, this moment, and the global context around it really helps, hopefully, to kind of begin setting that stage. Carlos, can you jump in and talk a little about the founding of the PAIGC, about sort of how the independence movement gained steam from this sort of moment forward? What were the goals? Who were the leaders? What did that start to look like?
Oh, well, thank you for
another small question for you.
for that loaded question. But I believe that Angelo framed the history, well, in terms of the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. With the social conditions in Cabo Verde in particular, with the droughts, and we have literature to testify to that, as the novelist would, would frame in their books about the hunger, the lack of rain, the cyclical droughts, and dying of many people because of hunger, and the forced, almost like forced immigration, that Cape Verdeans had to go through so they would not perish. So a lot of changes were happening. Other African countries, were fighting to gain independence in the 60s. So there comes a leader in Amilcar Cabral, who studied agronomy in Portugal and came back to work in Guinea-Bissau. And he goes through, he knew the country. Guinea-Bissau has a lot of ethnic groups, but Amilcar Cabral was a strategist, an intellectual strategist that knew the countryside. So he started to mobilize and educate the people for about what was going on, not only in Guinea-Bissau, but also in Cape Verde. So with this in mind, he and some of his colleagues formed the Partido Africano para a Independência da Guiné e Cabo Verde. This is the sigla of PAIGC in Portuguese, so the African Party for the Liberation of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, back in 1956. To fight and to also win the independence of the Portuguese colonial regime. Angelo mentioned that, of course, Portugal was going itself through a dictatorship by Salazar. It's called Salazar regime from 1926 to 1974. So initially, of course, Amilcar Cabral and his compatriots wanted to betterment for the people of Guinea-Bissau and Cabo Verde together. Many protests, reivindication of the rights of women, or women's rights, but the right to strike, for instance, the right to protest. But at one in 1959, in the port of PGT, there was a workman's strike that the Portuguese troops assassinated about 50 strike workers. So faced with that brutality, Amilcar Cabral and his compatriots say, we don't want violence. We were not looking for violence, but the violence being perpetrated on us, so we have to respond in kind. So they started the armed struggle, I think in 1961. So it lasted until almost the independence in 1975, in 1974, beyond the assassination of Amilcar Cabral in 1973. So I don't know if I could expand on more, but I can come back to this. So this in summary of what what your question is asking. I hope I
Yeah.
try to answer it.
No, that was great. And I think very helpful for sort of building on what Angelo talked about and taking us sort of through the kind of moments of the development of the kind of revolutionary forces. Manuel, can you still hear us?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now you were here in the United States during this period and the sort of development of the revolution, this sort of moment that Carlos is describing. Can you talk a little bit about your personal experiences through the period of the revolutionary history? Sort of what was the awareness of what was happening in Cabo Verde like here in Massachusetts, and how did you experience the sort of period of revolution that Carlos is talking about?
Yes, I want to go back to Portugal because I was in Portugal from 1969 to 1973 studying, and I didn't finish my studies there due to I was drafted into the Portuguese Navy. During our training for Marine Special Operations, the curriculum was the theory and tactical maneuvers that Amílcar Cabral practiced to fight the colonial army. The purpose was to be able to tackle the challenge before us during that training. Through this process, I quietly learned and became aware of the armed struggle, not just in former Portuguese Guinea, but in all the other colonies of Angola and Mozambique. I kept within me this consciousness about Cabral's vision for the liberation and the self-determination of the colonies. I recollect the vibrant joy and screaming throughout Lisbon on January 20th, 1973, when Cabral was assassinated. I could not show any emotion of discomfort due to fear of reprisal, being in the Navy. After every completion of training, we would substitute the commandos in Africa. I was assigned to Portuguese Guinea, now Guinea-Bissau, to depart from Lisbon on January 1st, 1974. My parents and siblings were living in the United States, and of course I took advantage of their living far away to seek permission from my superiors to visit them and say goodbye. You know that the war in Guinea-Bissau was one of the worst in Africa, the Portuguese Africa. A special entry visa was issued to me by the American Embassy in Lisbon due to this contact. And then, in fact, Marcelo Caetano was the first minister of Portugal, and he wrote a letter to the American Embassy, which, I wasn't even interviewed for the visa. Just, they issued the visa on that same day of October, and then came to the US on October 3rd, 1973. This was for me to return to Lisbon before January 1st, 1974. Through this systematic practice of counter-attacking Cabral, I became more conscious about the need for the struggle of liberation. And when I visited the United States, I decided to defect and stay in the US, thanks to my father, who filed an immigration petition on my behalf. With the April Revolution in Portugal, April 25th, 1974, the liberation movements of Guinea, Cabo Verde, Angola, and Mozambique set their independence dates. Cabo Verde then became independent on July 5th, 1975. I personally attended and celebrated our first year of independence from Portugal here in the United States at the Villa Rosa in Brockton, Massachusetts. It was a gorgeous and unforgettable day. I kept a ribbon signed by most of the participants as a symbolic moment of our history in the diaspora. Significantly, one of the signatures is of our fourth president of the Republic of Cabo Verde, Jorge Carlos Fonseca. I have the ribbon with me. I wish I could show it to you, but unfortunately I can't. But this was the moment that we celebrated in the diaspora, in Brockton, the first independence of Cabo Verde with the people from most of Massachusetts. At this time, we had the people from New Bedford, mainly, they have a group called the PAIGC Support Committee that really helped us to understand the fight for liberation movement, because the people in the community didn't know exactly what's going on. And since that day, we became, as a community, more aware of the struggle for the liberation of Cape Verde and the other Portuguese colonies. That's mainly, my experience, and from there, I continue to fight in a way, dedicating my whole life in education, helping students be the best they could as Cape Verdeans and Cape Verdean Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Manuel, for sharing that personal history about your experiences. Angelo, I wonder if we could pull back a little from what Manuel's described, and if you can help sketch in some of those larger arcs for our audience of kind of the broader kind of conflicts of the revolution, some of the important events that emerged, and sort of what support looked like for the independence movement in this bigger framework.
Well, I think, Manuel Gonçalves, with his wide knowledge about this, he said a lot. But normally we say that in Cape Verde, we didn't have military conflict. So in fact, the war was centered in Guinea-Bissau. So there was that, as Carlos also mentioned, after the PAIGC killing, that was an incredible impact on how Amílcar Cabral moved ahead in terms of pursuing his goals for the liberation movement. So the entire movement was centered in Guinea-Bissau, and the headquarters, in fact, in Guinea-Conakry, which is a neighboring country of Guinea-Bissau, right? So Guinea-Bissau was the front line since starting in '63, as was mentioned. But going back to Cape Verde, I should probably bring more a personal thing that, to follow on Manuel's steps. So even though we say we didn't have military conflict in Cape Verde, but I remember that it was a very tense times, especially after we heard about Amílcar Cabral assassination and getting close to '74 and of course to '75, because that period was like a very tense, because people didn't know, many people didn't have many answers. First is Amílcar Cabral is killed, so what is going to happen, right? So, but the region that I was born, we had so many people involved in the struggle in Cape Verde, for well connected with what was happened in Guinea-Bissau and also with Portugal, of course. So we had a clandestine group of people working, and you have information sharing, and Amílcar Cabral was also very well connected with what was happening in Cape Verde. So when I say tense, is because in Cape Verde you had the military presence of Portuguese troops. They had like a bases in many different islands. So especially in my village, they had a huge base, because people should know that Amílcar Cabral's family is from that region. So and the mobilization, the resistance story that we know about the interior of the island, that also is well connected with creating this awareness for independence. So the Portuguese took that area as a critical area in terms of attention. So different aspects of the fight happened in the interior of Santiago Island. Of course, in other islands, Suba Santiago was very present because of the size of the island. So even my family members, so I had, brothers really involved in this continuum movement. And it's also important to say that a lot of young students that were connected to all this process, they were put in prison by the secret police, so in one of the concentration camps, so we should call it like that, in the village of Tarrafal, which is like 50 minutes by car from the main city in Praia. So we had imprisoned people in the prison of Tarrafal, and we know a lot of them. So the impacts of this is in so many different levels. So families being really affected by all these aspects. Probably I will stop here and let Carlos and Manuel, if they want, also add something on this.
Great. Thank you, Angelo.
Mhm.
Carlos, if you want to build off what Angelo said, I'm also curious about how, and you touched on this, the sort of end of the dictatorship in Portugal precipitated that period of independence, and how that transition worked through this sort of kind of long-term move toward independence, what that period looked like.
Yes, many of course, many people say that, the Carnation Revolution in Portugal, the 25 de Abril, the 25th of April 1974, precipitated, the independence of Guinea-Bissau, Cabo Verde, Angola, and Mozambique. However, lately, a lot of scholars agrees and recognize that it's probably the other way around. Okay, it's because of the struggle from the independence. Remember, Portugal is a small country. They were fighting in three fronts, in Mozambique, Angola, and Guinea-Bissau. Although, of course, like Angelo said, there was no armed struggle in Cape Verde. There was a lot of tension and scrimmage, if you will. But coming back to, I was a kid. I'm considered Angelo's brother, Cacá Barbosa, has a great poem. It says, "The Children of Independence." Meninos de Independência. I was in school. I was like in fourth grade. I was not conscious about it, but in that time, I had a Portuguese teacher in fourth grade, and I remember, because it was the transition, and there was some of my colleagues say, tell the teacher, go back to your country, right? Go back to Portugal. There was that movement that was happening in the islands. So there was a transition period. But coming back to the cause of, to me, the cause of the revolution in Portugal, mainly Amílcar Cabral had to do with that. Because during the armed struggle, Amílcar Cabral would send radio message to the Portuguese troops in battle, stressing, we are not against you. We are not against the Portuguese people. In fact, you guys, you are being oppressed by the regime.
Yeah.
So we should be fighting the same fight to liberate you. You are being oppressed. You are under a dictatorship. So the troops that made the 25th revolution in Portugal, most of the captains were fighting in Guinea-Bissau. They were listening to Amílcar Cabral's message, and they were, in a sense, Amílcar Cabral mobilized them to overthrow the Portuguese dictatorship. So, to my point of view, Amílcar Cabral had, and of course, had a lot to do with the revolution, bloodless revolution that happened in Portugal. So it's funny, like when I was in school at UMass Amherst, I decided to take a few African American studies. And it was interesting that, you have American professors that was teaching about Amílcar Cabral. I came to learn about more Amílcar Cabral here in the United States than in Cape Verde. Unfortunately, this is something that we can discuss during question and answers if we have time with the audience. But, Amílcar Cabral should be studied in Cabo Verde. And I'll stop there for now.
That's a great note, I think, to move into my next question, which is for Manuel, but then I'll open it up to all of you, sort of as a last question. Thinking about, first of all, Manuel, if you can talk a little bit about why you think marking this anniversary of independence is important. And then are there threads that connect this history to today?
Okay, I just want to say one thing that Carlos said about Amílcar Cabral, the reading Amílcar Cabral, and I recall the Comandante Pedro Pires in one of his lectures saying that everyone should read Cabral at least twice to really understand his theories. And that's what we all should do. But talking about the 50th anniversary, I just want to say again that I was in Portugal during the time that Amílcar was assassinated, and also the time that Salazar passed. He fell from a chair, and then a couple of weeks later, he died. But I went to his wake at the Mosteiros of Jerônimos in Lisbon, just to see this dictator and reconnect, me with being in Portugal. At that time, I had a Portuguese passport, in Africa with that Academy of Amílcar Cabral, to really understand the liberation movement. And then again, like Carlos, when I came to the United States, it was like an open field of knowledge about the world, about the revolution, about our own history that we never learned in Cabo Verde, even in schools. We learn about the rivers and mountains of Portugal, but never knew about how many islands were in Cabo Verde during the system. But anyway, marking this 50th anniversary of independence is very significant, a milestone for Cape Verdeans, and the Cape Verdeans who were born in the United States. This celebration is not just about looking back at the historical event. It's a moment to reflect on the journey of a nation and its people, acknowledging the struggles, the sacrifices, and also the triumphs that have shaped the identity. The struggles is not just Amilcar struggles, but people in the island struggle to survive. The famines, the resistance to the Portuguese oppression, all that's part of our history. And sometimes we don't realize, the years of famine, that thousands and thousands of people died due to lack of food and lack of Portuguese governing the islands in a manner that people could survive. The independence for Cabo Verde was achieved on July 1975, and that symbolizes the hard-won freedom from colonial rule and the beginning of course, the self-determination. This anniversary serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience and the spirit of Cabo Verde, or Cabo Verdean people, who overcame numerous challenges to carve out their own path. For many, this history resonates deeply, connecting generations and fostering a sense of pride in their heritage. We see younger people today, they had all this sense of pride through language. Creole is the language of identity, the music, the morna, the raps, and then they freely do the songs they want, and they live in a way that we, the more adults, never lived like them. Today, the threads that connect this history to the present are evident in the conversations about identity, especially the language. You see, Cape Verdeans who were born in America, they want to learn the language of their ancestors they never had the opportunity to learn. And today, they can connect or reconnect with Cabo Verde through their language, Creole, the culture, and the community. Cape Verdeans and Cape Verdeans born in America often reflect on their roots, celebrating their blend. It's a blend of African, Portuguese, Brazilian, and all the Creole influences. There's a word that we call in Creole, creolidad, Creoliness, that is part of not just Cabo Verde, but all the Caribbeans, of the African diaspora. We have the same kind of roots in terms of history, in terms of sacrifices, the struggles, the resilience. So this independence narrative is a source of inspiration, reminding the importance of unity, perseverance, and the pursuit of justice in our lives today. That's why, Cape Verdeans, the word resilience, it's part of, they resist, at the same time, they suffer through, because, even today in Cabo Verde, the people see, don't complain, don't protest, just suffer inside because of that kind of suffering and sacrifice they have done in the past. For Cape Verdeans and Cape Verdeans born in America, independence also represents more than just a date on the calendar. It embodies ideas of freedom, hope, and opportunity. Unfortunately, in Cape Verde, we see on the part of our youth, they live in the country looking for better opportunities, but the independence still is like a dream. Our younger are leaving the country because they don't have yet this opportunity. But, the independence, I said, it serves as a foundation for building a brighter future while we honor the past. This 50th anniversary is not just a celebration of history, but also it's an opportunity to strengthen connections, to embrace our culture pride, and inspire the next generation to continue the legacy of resilience and community that has defined Cabo Verde for half a century after independence. So the hope is that we should and will continue to juntamo. Juntamo is the word that, a very clear word that we help each other, we unite together to reflect on how far we have come and continue to look ahead, moving forward. So that's Juntamo. That's basically my experience in both Cape Verde and the United States. And fortunately, I may say that what I've learned in terms of my knowledge and intellectual wisdom, it's thanks to the United States open the horizons of my knowledge, and I'm glad I came here to have this opportunity that I never had in Cape Verde. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you for sharing. I love that independence is like a dream.
Yeah.
Well, I'm cognizant of our timing. I do maybe for those in the audience, we can, Angelo, Carlos, Manuel, can you go a couple minutes over if we take some questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for those in the audience, if you'd like to raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can ask a question. You can also put them in the chat as a question, and I can moderate those to our panelists. While our audience does that, Carlos, Angelo, do you have any sort of short little thing you want to offer up that you see as well of sort of important lessons we can draw from this history, things that echo today for our audience to think about? And as they answer that, audience, again, please feel free to raise your hand or drop a question in the chat, and we'll look for those coming in. Angelo, Carlos, need to add?
Angelo, you want to go?
Well, probably just to mention, since I just heard Manuel making this very important statement, it makes me to. So he spoke about reflecting on things. Being a Cape Verdean and looking at what we are seeing today in the entire world, this is not just Cape Verde and Africa. This is globally. It makes us to really, if we read the people that Manuel just mentioned, for example, it makes them actual. So those people are there, their thinking process and the mechanics of how they process the aspects of understanding history make them today even more powerful. So in the case of Amílcar Cabral, the way he approached aspects related to social justice that we are still looking at today, and aspects of identity, and with the main focus on what was his flagship in terms of thinking, is the importance of your own culture. So how you connect with your own culture and what it provides you as an individual. And in fact, one of his important quotes has to do with using the concept of culture in terms of liberating you in your process to be a person, to find a dignity as a person. So just to bring this aspect of Amílcar Cabral in terms of connecting his way of thinking to culture, to freedom, to dignity of a person, but for all mankind. It's not just a specific focus on a specific population, as the struggle was in Guinea-Bissau or Cape Verde.
Carlos, I know
and just to add what Manuel and Angelo just said, some people may ask, was it worth it, right? The fight for the independence. We know that Cape Verde has gone and continues to struggle for development, so many people would question that. Uh, but I would say, yes, it was worth it. It was worth the sacrifice that Amílcar Cabral and many others perish in fighting for the dignity of our people, for self-determination, for having the right to protest, to express what is our given right. We can agree to disagree, but we have the right to disagree and not be punished because I don't agree with what a political party is setting for us. So it was worth it.
Thank you, Carlos. We have a question from the audience that I feel like is made for this panel. So if I can jump in with their question, which I'm sure they're burning to hear the answer to. How have the Criollo language and Cabo Verdean literature helped to inspire the fight for independence? Carlos, are you sure you didn't plant this question?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, how have the Criollo language and Cabo Verdean literature helped inspire the fight for independence?
Wow,
that's a very good question.
That's a very good question. Of course, the Criollo language. I'll preface by saying, Amílcar Cabral, the official language of Cabo Verde is Portuguese, right? But Amílcar Cabral, in one of the quotes, he says, the best thing that the Portuguese left us is the Portuguese language until we create conditions also to teach our language. But in relation to the question itself, the language, Creole language, was the source of communication. It was the lingua franca in Guinea-Bissau. You have many ethnic groups, but they all speak Creole, and that's the language that Cabral connected with them. So the Creole language was a weapon of liberation. So they used the language, the Creole language in Guinea-Bissau, to connect all the groups that fought against the colonial power, Portuguese. So it is in a sense very, very important. And for me, who teaches the language as part of the culture, and we breathe our language in every aspect, right? In dreaming, we dream in Creole. In singing, in speaking, we feel comfortable. Okay.
I know Manuel wants to jump in, but let us leave Manuel for the end for him to close all this. So I just want to say this. As far as our language, in this idea how it inspired the independence, I know professors, they may have a different angle in terms of answering, but since life in Cape Verde runs in our own language, so it's not difficult to understand that all the frustrations, all the even the dreams, the hopes of the people is expressed mainly in the Cape Verdean language. So the example I want to make is everything that happens in music styles like batuco, finação, morna, even coladeira, you will find there, even before the independence, some moments where people are expressing themselves in a way that you are, bringing your manifestation in terms of positioning yourself, in terms of exercising your freedom and the hopes that you have for your own community in a way that only using that language would allow you to do that. But of course, as Professor Carlos said, our intellectuals, since the official language is Portuguese, even before the independence, the way they also position themselves as intellectuals to question, to position themselves in the struggle, I think also play their role in terms of pushing the agenda that made us to come close to 75, which is the Independence Day.
Thank you.
Can I just add more?
Mhm.
Please.
No, what Carlos said about language and the use, Cabral using the language Creole as a weapon. During the time of the liberation, Cabral used the Radio Libertação in Guinea-Conakry. All the communication was in Creole, not just for the people of Guinea-Bissau and the surrounding Conakry, but there were people in Cabo Verde listening to the Radio Libertação in Creole directly from Amílcar Cabral. And unfortunately, the PID, the secret Portuguese police were getting people that were listening to the radio, and these people were put in jail in Cabo Verde just because they were listening to the radio in Creole by Amílcar Cabral. But, that's what, the Portuguese did. The language, even our language suffered with the intimidation from the Portuguese. I am an example. I was intimidated in school by speaking Creole. But again, the resilience. Cesária Évora went to the whole world, not singing in Portuguese, but singing in Creole, and all the other musicians and artists. There are few mornas in Portuguese, but a morna, good morna, is well done in Creole, and people really love the morna because it's an inspiration to their soul. So again, the Creole language during the liberation movement was used more appropriate than the Portuguese itself, because language is what? Language is communication. There was the weapon to communicate on both sides, the islands and the Africa, Guinea-Bissau, in Creole, so people could understand the foundations, the reasons of the struggle. Thank you.
And Manuel, you mentioned language education there, which we've got one question here to kind of close out the panel from Barbara Burgo, who says, as a third-generation American-born Cabo Verdeana, I am thrilled to listen to all of you exceptional Cabo Verdeano educators and brilliant men, all my friends, and Manuel, my first Criollo instructor at Rhode Island College. Why is it that the islands still don't respect and educate on Amílcar Cabral and celebrate our language? What can we do as US born to rectify this?
Let me, my organization, Mili Mila is a word in Creole. It's part of the reader. Kuzema Kuza Mili Mila, it's I'm here, I'm there, it's the imagination, all that. But we're doing, all my life I went to Cabo Verde looking for answers about materials in Creole and so forth. And the people, especially the politicians, always reject, they always said, we have to do something else, we have to feed the people. And they never understood that in order to feed the people, you should educate people in their own language. And most of the people in Cabo Verde, I would say more than half, 50%, don't speak Portuguese or write Portuguese well. And still, in Cape Verde, Portuguese is still used as a first language, which is not. Cape Verde Portuguese should be taught as a second language, not first language. And we still have problems with teaching Creole in schools. They started with 10th grade instead. using, the first grades like kindergarten on. And a lot of people talk about variations, as obstacles, and variations are not obstacles. They are wealth of our language, and all the variations should be taught in schools, and in order for us to uniform the language. Language uniformization is very important. All languages have dialects, have variations. And look at English. Look at Portuguese, the Azorian Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, all that. The Cape Verdean Portuguese. The Cape Verdean Portuguese, we have the Sotavento and Barlavento Portuguese with different as Cape Verdean Portuguese, Angolan, all that. Just saying that people say about variations are not obstacles of language, but they are wealth of a language. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, that was great.
I get a little bit emotional when I talk about language.
Wonderful. Well, I do want to respect our panelists' time. We're a little after the hour here. Angelo, Carlos, do you have anything quick and short you want to add? I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, well, I would go if you don't mind,
mhm.
because I think the question that our friend Barbara is making is very important. But I would, of course, I understand what she's meaning with the question. But on my personal view, we never spoke more about Amilcar Cabral and language in Cape Verde than now. So it means that the agenda has been, because the colonial system, as we started talking about that context, put in our heads that we don't have history, we don't have heroes, okay? So a country that have no history, no heroes, it's very hard, after 50 years, so not considering even the 500 years, right? To really reconstruct what they think about their own people, right? So Amilcar Cabral is a Cape Verdean hero, and the struggle that we have is to make it seamless. We don't have even to do conference to talk about him, because people just understand why he is important. But again, she's asking at the end how a person like her, Barbara, is doing what she has to do. So she's putting a conference on Amilcar Cabral coming soon, which I would take the opportunity to invite everybody to participate.
That's great. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, I think that's a great note for us, thinking about sort of the erasure of cultural heritage through the colonial period, and the ways in which revolution and independence have offered a sort of a reset, right? A moment to fill in and rebuild what that cultural identity is in a new kind of political context. For our audience who have joined us, thank you for sticking through this panel and listening to our incredible panelists. Incredible heartfelt thank yous to Carlos, to Angelo, and to Manuel for joining and sharing their thoughts and experiences. I do want to encourage audience members to sign up and join us for the next part of this conversation on October 22nd. Same time on Zoom, we'll be hosting a conversation about how Cape Verdean culture is expressed through contemporary art, moderated by my colleague Imelda Rivera-Laxton. She'll be joined by Cape Verdean contemporary artists from around the world who are thinking about that very question. But for now, I just really want to give my incredible thanks, appreciation, and gratitude to you all for coming here into this space to have this conversation with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to shed some light in our history, and also, the celebration of the 50th anniversary of independence of Cape Verde.
Thank you.
And
All right.
I'm sorry I couldn't make it through Zoom, but at least, you were able to listen to me. Thank you.
Yes, we've been able to hear you. Thank you, Carlos, for hosting our third panelist. All right. Take care, everybody, and have wonderful days.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.